that's a pretty picture.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We will be beginning shortly. Thank you for joining us during this breakout session at the Safer Births Now virtual conference. Before we begin, we just have a few quick reminders. Questions for the speaker can be added to the chat or the question and answer function throughout the session, and we'll address as many questions as possible during the Q&A session or at Mama Shafia's convenience. Please share where you are joining from in the chat, and we will begin shortly. Welcome, Valerie from California. I see Christina's from Brooklyn. And Kristen is from Atlanta. I see Dr. Farrington is still in St. Thomas. I want some of that sun you have, I'm sure. I see Miss King is coming in from Baltimore. Be more, welcome. We'll wait just about one more minute and then again we'll get officially started. While we wait, share with myself and Mama Shafia what you are most excited about today. I know I am sitting here with a lot of excitement, but I want to hear from everyone else. What are you excited about with this session? Berta, I hate that you are dealing with snow up there. It looks like in Michigan. You can keep that up there. Dr. Janet, we're hopefully going to get into some of those recipes. I too appreciated all the recipes. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session of the Safer Births Now virtual conference. My name is Ronitha Darrett, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's session titled Meet Mama Shafia Monroe. The Safer Births Now conference brings together clinicians, researchers, innovators, parents, and their loved ones, and advocates from around the country with a shared goal: which is improving outcomes for Black mamas and newborns. We're excited to have you join us for this discussion, and I'm elated to be the person who gets to moderate this session. It is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Shafia Monroe, also known as Mama Shafia, is a midwife, author, and cultural historian, and the founder of SMC Full Circle Doula Training. She is a leading expert on African American birth and postpartum traditions. She has spent over 4 decades caring for mothers and studying the practice of 20th century Black midwives. Her groundbreaking book, Mothering the Mother, African American Postpartum Traditions, Recipes, and Healing, revives ancestral wisdom to support modern families. Featured in publications such as Madame Noir and the American Journal of Public Health, Mama Shafia continues to champion maternal health equity through education, advocacy, and community-centered care. During this hour, I am more than confident you will be enlightened, feel the spirit of womanhood, and understand why Mama Shafia has such a vast following. Mothering the Mother, African American Postpartum Traditions, Recipes, and Healing will be the focus of this webinar. This book is so rich with history, recipes, and traditions that we will be unable to cover the entire book, which I am just, I can't believe we can't, but we just can't because it is so rich. This book is for mothers, aunties, uncles, sisters, and those that just want to know how to incorporate holistic ways in their life. The primary focus of this session will be Chapter 1, Reviving the Lost Traditions of the African American Granny Midwife, and Chapter 8, Rested. Throughout the discussion, we are certain questions will be asked about the entire book, and we will attempt to address all these questions from all the chapters if we have time. Please remember to use the question and answer option for questions you would like Mama Shafia to answer throughout, but specifically during the question and answer session, which will be towards the end of her session. Beyond this section, you can connect with Mama Shafia online on LinkedIn at Shafia Monroe, on X, also known as Twitter, at Shafia Monroe, and also on Instagram. We will drop all of those in the chat feature, along with her website, which is shafiamonroe.com. I want to go ahead and get right into the conversation by having Mama Shafia talk about what matters to her most in Chapter 1.
Good morning, everyone. So excited to talk. I love to talk about all things Black mamas and healing and birth, things like that. Excited to be on this call today and just to talk about what got me inspired to write Mothering the Mother, African American Postpartum Traditions, Recipes, and Healing. And over the years, as it says in the book, going to many conferences and just hearing the movement around the 4th trimester and postpartum reaching its plateau again, which it always had in the African American community, but then it got lost. I knew that we needed to do something for Black mothers, Black women, the Black community, to understand that we actually had a rich culture. And we didn't know what it was anymore. We were really, what I saw was mothers really desperate with depression, frustration, anger, trying to figure it out, but no place to go to where the information represented their culture. And all cultures are great, but so isn't our culture. So I knew that I needed to go back, Sankofa, go back and fetch it, go back and revive what we had lost. And we lost a lot, you all. We came to this country with so many rich traditions. Even though we were enslaved, we still had tradition. We came here as highly intelligent people. So we didn't come here as like dumb people. And the women that came here had already been mothers. They may have been midwives, grandmothers. So they knew in their own village how they took care of each other. And interesting enough, I read the book recently, right before I started reading the book, how the creator just guides me to things. I had Roots by Alex Haley on my shelf. I don't know how many. That book was old. Let me grab this book. Let's flip through it. I flipped through Kunta Kinte's life, and I started reading it, and he talked about how his mother gave birth. He remembered how they would bring her after the birth down to the river and sit her in the stream with some type of calabash and some type of medicine where they washed her birthing area. He talked about when his wife, he only had one child, when his wife did get pregnant during enslavement on the plantation, once she had the baby, how these two Black women, these two elderly women came with big pots. One had soup and one was hot, full of rag. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. We came to the mom and we brought soup. Even back then, we knew to do it. And we brought heat. We didn't bring cold. We brought heat, hot water and cloths to put on her body, on her lower back, on her perineum, on her breast, all the places that we know as birth workers, mothers, grandmothers, the areas that need that heat after the baby comes out. So just reiterated how much we had lost. But all this time is right there in Alex Haley's book, just that little piece. So I just went deeper to research what I had heard as growing up in the South with my elder women and even the men. Like even my dad said to me, "Oh, breastfeeding. Everyone breastfed in church with their breasts out. It wasn't a big deal." Like really? So yeah, everyone just would pull their breasts out and breastfeed. So even we back then, and he's born 1913. So even late 1800s and early 1900s, breastfeeding publicly without shame was the norm. And we also lost that. So reviving all of that is in chapter one. Is really reviving the psychological, traditional, and spiritual aspect of what it means to practice and live and believe in African American postpartum care. The people believed in their traditions. If you don't believe in the traditions, it's not going to work for you. You believe in Christmas, you believe in Hanukkah, you believe in the Eid. We have our beliefs. Believe in the tooth fairy, and we believe that having, vitamin C is going to strengthen our immune system. So the same for the African American postpartum tradition. The people believed in the work. And what I love about it and what I learned that belief actually was evidence-based. What they knew without maybe putting a scientific name to it, we now can prove is true. We now know, yes, those soups are important. You gave birth and you cried, you urinated, you defecated, you vomited, you lost blood, and you're leaking milk. That's all water. You're becoming dehydrated. Dehydration reduces your wellness. You're more prone for infections and headaches and fever. And that's why we say, starve a cold, feed a fever with the soup. So the soup was what we already knew that we needed to have liquids back in our body. And also my research, I learned that before I got to the South, I had to go to Africa for this research around nutrition. And we were always people that reverence the land. You don't hear that, but we knew back then that we were the keepers of the earth. We highly respected the land. You could not even cut a tree without going to the elders, get permission why you cut the tree, how we replanted. So we don't hear that. But with that, I learned that there was a big thing about how they fed each other and how they used the one pot meal using, we created iron. So, having iron pots and putting everything into that one pot, the fruits, the vegetables, the water, whatever they put in it, and make this one big heavy meal. And so I was happy to see that and then track that. We'll skip the boat. We know the boat was a nightmare, but once we got on the shore here, and those who were able resorted once again to that one pot meal. So think of grandma, in her kitchen. I can see my grandma with the big pot. She had, though I don't eat pork back then, she had the ham hock and she had the collard greens and the onions, all in one big pot. And we said back then, they would boil it all day. And then you all might remember, I don't know your age, we were taught that, oh, Black folks, we boil our food too long. We're killing it. So we went to the whole raw thing, and now we're back to bone broth. Boil it for 15 days. Well, hey, grandma was doing that, and they kind to villainize that. So just be aware that things that we did historically, we're kind of like shut down as not being quality. We kind of gave them up. And so we're reviving it now, reviving by understanding that there is a scientific connection to what we've always done and that it does work and that we need it. Black mothers need to know that they are valued. That's what I'm reviving. That you all are loved. That's what we're reviving. That you deserve care. That's what we're reviving. And that the community has a responsibility to take care of you. That birth in the Black community is a social event. Every book I read was groups of women coming together collectively with pots and quilts and brooms to pre-clean the house before the mother had the baby, but definitely after the birth, they would show up. Automatic, you don't have to ask. If that was the culture. Oh, Mary Lou had a baby. Let's get, we already knew she was pregnant. So now we heard that she actually had the baby. Let's get these greens we've been holding aside. Let's get this crawfish or whatever, these sweet potatoes. And let's make sure she has enough food. Let's make sure that her mother and her partner, her husband, are getting the help so that he or she or they don't get exhausted. So reviving all that. It is a lot, you all, but when you put it like in a sequence, it's just like you get up, you wash up, you brush your teeth, you might take a shower, you put your underclothes on, use your deodorant. It's like it becomes a rhythm. And so the postpartum care, it really is rhythmic. I love it. It's a rhythmic. There's a sense of music and movement and a good feeling because here's this new mom just glowing because you're in her space. This cute little baby, all chunky and growing, and everybody's happy because when you show up, you bring the juice, you bring the inspiration, you bring what we know is necessary to revive and maintain the postpartum tradition. So we don't want to revive it anymore. Now we want to practice it and keep it. We don't want to have to lose it again. So that's why it's in the book. If we're not sure what to do, we can read it and pick the parts that resonate with you. People say, well, I don't eat meat, I don't eat shrimp. Fine, make your soup with tofu or with beans only or tempeh, whatever your substitute is. You don't have to do everything exactly, but it is a foundation. And I think the part that I want to reiterate again in terms of what I want us to revive and maintain is the respect and the love and the honor for Black mothers, because we don't get that in this country. We never did. They sold our children, and they don't treat us right in hospital. They don't treat us right at the airport or at our jobs. It's not just the hospital, it's across the board. So when you see that new mom with her baby, she so much needs this tradition. She so much needs to feel rested and fed and loved and groomed and brought laughter to. And don't forget the coconut cake here. At some point in the cobbler, we all need some sweets and some honey in that, and that postpartum tea, and to pull that blanket on her. She needs that because that's going to increase her oxytocin level, which means her uterus is going to contract, prevent hemorrhaging. It means it's going to help her milk reject. The baby gets enough milk, so in her brain, it's just going to make her enter the rest of her postpartum period well. So it's not just the first 42 days, though I focus on that, but the first 40 days is like it's your jump start. We know now that just in terms of statistics, majority of deaths take place for a woman in pregnancy. Second is the day of birth. Third is the first 2 weeks postpartum, and then from 14 to 42 days, then from 42 days up to 365 days. So that window from birth to the first 42 days or the first 6 weeks is really critical. It's not the end all, but what this book says, let's focus and give her a whole bunch of good, healing, loving energy. So when she gets to the 6 weeks, she's not having what we call a setback. Her incision has not opened up. She's not hemorrhaging. She doesn't have headaches. She can keep going now to get strong for month 2, month 3, month 6, month 9. So by the time we see her at 6 months, really, she should be feeling good because she has such intense good care. So you start your plant off with wet dirt, and you put that seed and you water it every single day for the first 5 weeks. Then after that, it gets a big hole. The roots get a good hole in the earth, and then it keeps shooting up. Then we maintain it, watering every other day. But in the beginning, we have to really guard that new plant, make sure that it can come up. So we're guarding the new mom in the first 42 weeks, making sure that she can come up and maintain and get past that danger point where more things happen. As the granny midwife knew, they knew that birth was a death in life situation. Always has been, but it always will be. When I hear that we want to stop maternal mortality, I know we cannot stop death, you all, but we can prevent things that should not be happening. But they knew that mothers were, very, very delicate. Of course, they saw mothers have bleeding problems and have all kind of issues. So they learned and knew that if we take care of her and protect her and make sure that she's resting and not lifting heavy things up and being honored and prayed over, then we pray that we'll see her 2 years later. So that is the whole goal of reviving this part of the book, this part of the template for postpartum. It is a whole mental, philosophical concept that I'm asking us to adopt. I'm asking us to adopt that we all should be on the same page. And that's what I like about before we had gentrification. Now we're all over the place. But before we lived in small areas, my Alabama area called Paula had about maybe, I'm going to say 100 families. It was so intimate and everybody knew everybody and everybody knew what was going on and everybody helped everybody. So you didn't have to ask. But now we have to relearn this. And maybe your friend or sister might live in New York and you're in California. So can you get there? I don't know. But maybe you can get people that she knows to do what you wish you could do. So just we're gonna have to kind of quilt it together, you all, piecemeal, because we're not in that ideal world anymore, but we still can bring important parts in the book to help the mother to not feel isolated, not get depression. In fact, just being cared for, the studies say that it reduces postpartum depression. So although all postpartum depression is not because of hormones, it's because of isolation and being too tired and feeling like nobody cares about you. And so I'm going to end there for a moment and take a sip.
Mama Shafia, thank you. I see the hearts going across the screen. You talked about reviving, and that was a theme when I was reading the book. It's just reviving and connection, reviving the garden, reviving ourselves, reviving our community. If you don't mind, before we transition into chapter 8, and I do want to get to some questions from chapter 1. So I'm going to be looking for a question, if you don't mind putting it in the chat. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But I do have one question. When you talk about the connection and rest and rallying your family, your extended neighborhood, your maybe sorority sisters, and even people who are in the neighborhood, right, what type of conversation should a person be having prior to the delivery in order for that support plan to be in place? And we're all not just rushing around trying to get to mama if she delivers early, or even if she delivers on time. How do we create that support plan, that collective group of people who's going to support mama during that time? And while you're responding to that, I'm going to be looking for questions.
Okay, I would say that, of course, ideally, we all have read the book preconceptionally. You don't want to read this book when you have the baby. It's already too late. You don't want to read the 9 months. So hopefully we're giving this book to our daughters and our sons, by the way, so they know what to do. So again, people knew what to do. But until that time, what we could do, we talk about the birth plan, which we want to start at 6 months, to help the family identify what's the plan. Who is your community? And like you said, they might say, I'm part of my faith community. And I've seen that happen where the faith community comes in and people are just dropping food and coming in and helping out and cleaning out. I seen recently someone just had a baby I helped. She called her friend and they rose to the occasion. They're dropping off money. They're showing up. They're reorganizing their kitchen when I was there. So I think the first thing is to ask. I think we've been taught not to ask for help. We've been taught in these last generations to do for self, the me generation, independent, to ask the sign of weakness. So it's having to rethink that we should ask and give people the honor and the privilege to help us, because what we said about in this book, Reviving, when you take care of a mother, it was a form of worship. It's a way of thanking the creator that I'm able to help this miracle. So the person helping the new family is getting the blessings. So we want to get back to that. So therefore, when people are like, well, of course I want to help. I want to get those blessings. I want to get that good energy. I want to be a part of something good. To talk to those people and say, hey, I'm having a baby in May, and let's say it's February. I'm gonna, I'm practicing the lying in period. I'm gonna be home, for at least a good 30 to 40 days, and I wonder if you could come in at least once a week and just help me out. Specifically, warm up my food or cook my food. Be specific. Change my bed. Could you bring my 2 kids to the library for 2 hours so I could get a break? Just have it written out and let people choose what they can do. Kind of like the meal train, so it's going to be a postpartum lying in train. Put in what the needs are. In the back of the book, there is a calendar that puts things like, let's say massage. You're supposed to get a massage. The Black midwives rub their moms every day. I love that. She had her goose grease. She had her lard. She had her sesame oil. She massaged mother very much hands-on. When I talk about traditions and visit Africa, definitely people are rubbing their daughters, rubbing their baby. People are rubbing. So it's very hands-on. So who's giving that mom her daily massage? That should be on the list as well. It's not just food and clean, but it's also the physical contact. Who's creating her wonderful postpartum bath with her, her comfrey and her rosemary and her lavender water, calendula. Who's doing that for her? So that's the list that we want to ask our group. And I in the book it says, talk to your ex-girlfriend's mother-in-law. Maybe she wants to help you. Like, don't assume that just because you and he ain't together, you or she and you aren't together, doesn't mean that the family's upset. I know so many folks with a daughter's best friend with the mom, and they create that relationship. So don't be afraid to go and just ask. It's okay if people say no, but most people are going to say yes.
Okay. I don't see a question in the chat. And if I
Okay.
am missing it, I apologize. But I do have a question from reading the book. You talked about medical colleges or colleges that have a focus on producing doctors. You know what? I'm going to stop my question because I do see a question that came through. Christine indicated in the chat, where can you find comfrey that you in the book? Thank you, Christine.
uh, Well, comfrey comes from England, and in my book, I really try to differentiate uh, what was African origin. But right now, comfrey is an English plant, that herb that comes from England, that grows across the United States. It is a weed; it's invasive, so you can definitely. I grow it in my backyard. I'm going to tell you right now, if you can grow it, it's a beautiful plant. Keep it in a pot in your house, even or a pot in your backyard, because it will take over. Mine's in the backyard, it's in the ground. I want mine to take over. I use that much comfrey, and my family does as well. But you can always go to, I'm going to say first, and I don't have the list, but look for a Black online uh, herbal store to see. And there's several, by the way, that you can get the comfrey from there. And if not, just go to your basic Amazon or whatever online process you use and get the comfrey root, organic. Or also in your city, depends on where you live. We have herbal stores here and they sell comfrey. So online, grow it, ask a neighbor, and look for a local store. So it's very easy to get. It's
Okay.
it's common.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and transition into chapter 8 because
Now I see
all
it
of
says what does the exchange with existing African culture look like? I'm from Malawi, and I connect
okay.
deeply with all this because that looks like there, with a common vigilance is real there. The exchange. Why we say the exchange is just that we're continuing what you did in Malawi. Just we're going to keep it up here, so it's not really an exchange. It's more like going back and fetch it and then maintaining it. So I hope I answered that question.
And I'm also looking through the chat and I do not see any more questions. If you have questions related to chapter 1 or any questions that you would like for us to ask during the session and not at the end for question and answer, please put that in the chat while Mama Shafia is speaking and we will do our best to look at that. And now transitioning to chapter 8, rested. And I know every chapter in this book we needed to hear, but I am certain a lot of people need to hear about chapter 8, rested. As a woman, as an aunt, as a sister, as all levels and all titles that we carry. Mama Shafia, tell us about the need for rest.
It's so funny because I'm a wild Gemini. I have to make myself rest. So, but I love it when I do. So after we have a baby, we should rest, right? We have work. We call it labor. First of all, we carry the baby for 38 to 42 weeks. The baby came early, you still carried it. So you carried a human being. You're already exhausted from just being pregnant. Being pregnant is normal and wonderful, but it is a physiological tax on the body. So we need to rest during the pregnancy. Then we went into labor. It could have been a 2 hour or a 2 day and a cesarean surgical birth. All of those three things are also, again, we are tired. So this rest, and then we have the baby. Hopefully we have our baby. And so the concept is that to normalize rest. People say, well, I'm so tired. I just had a baby. Well, you're supposed to be tired because you just had a baby. So when someone says we're so tired, like, good. That means, as my aunt said, put your butt down, go to sleep. That was her. It was, I'm tired. I said, don't say you're tired, just go to sleep. So we want to normalize rest for Black women where we historically were not allowed to rest. We worked in the field, as you know, for abnormally abusive hours, sunrise to beyond sunset. Sometimes the stories I read that some of them, they were still out there, whether picking cotton or working in the big house. So that, then we go through the Civil War, with Jim Crow, we're working as domestics, we're still working hard. So we've always had to work hard. So we feel like we don't have the right to rest, but it is part of our culture. Because once we got to the granny midwife, and when she could protect the mom, and when the families could protect the mother, even during slavery, by saying, "Hey, I will pick cotton for her." We knew that she needed to rest. Well, I'll do her job. People would offer to talk to the so-called owner, human owner, that I would do her work for her so she can rest. And in some plantations, the mother had to get right back up. And people say, well, women got right back and went right back in the field. But how many were found dead from hemorrhage death by going right back there? Or prolapse uterus? We don't have those statistics. So we know that moms who rest have better outcomes. It takes 10 days for the cervix to close. And that little hole that opens up for the baby to come out called the cervix, the size of 10 fingers of a male, it takes 10 days to close up, which means that things can fall out. It also means that the placenta side is also open, so more prone for hemorrhaging by moving around too much. So that's why we want the mom to rest. And also, it's a time of honor. When she's resting, it's her time to be with her baby. We have to put the two together. Well, in America, it's just like this postpartum, but in the African-centered tradition, and when we talk about chapter one, it's the mother and the baby. You're pregnant to have a baby. That's the whole point, is to have the baby. So mothers want to be with their babies. They should want to be with their babies. And by allowing them to rest, give them that space of not having to do anything, that's the resting, not the sleeping. They're not cooking. They can just enjoy their baby and bond. They need time to bond with their baby, not just emotion, but even physiological. Being close to the baby prevents hemorrhaging because it causes oxytocin, causes joint contraction. It helps the baby to remember to breathe, it helps the baby to regulate his heat. It teaches how to breastfeed. So being together, it helps the mother and the baby. It's a physiological uh, healing that takes place along with the emotion. Mothers stress when the baby's not near them. So, in the kitchen clean, like, where's the baby? They happen to bring someone to school and leave the baby. So we want to keep her stress low to rest. So what is it to rest? Rest means to sit back and enjoy and let your mind just wander with positive thoughts. You don't have to be asleep. You can rest when you're just sitting in your backyard eating a piece of watermelon. You're resting. Or you can just lay on your couch and listen to music. You're resting. You can lay in bed holding your new baby and looking at your baby. You're resting. It just means that you're taking the time to do nothing and to really do what you want to do, but you're not working. Your free time, I'm not going to vacuum when I'm on my rest time. I'm not going to go and put the turkey in the oven. I'm not going to go and get on my phone and respond to emails or even scroll, see what people are doing. Resting is a centered time where you personally are taking time just with you, and there's no outside influence that's going to disrupt your peace of mind. That is resting, and that is so good for the body that we can just let things call homeostasis. And I think I put in the book, I know I put in the book that we don't understand or remember or take note that we are in a state of hypervigilance 24/7. We're so used to it. The bad news, the systemic racism we've learned to live with, all the things that happen to us, being battered, the subtle disrespects that we get. I'm in line, just bypass to some who don't look like me. These things happen all the time. And we just learn to stuff it down. So we're already kind of stressed out. So for us, we need rest. We want to prevent that high blood pressure and all the things that happen we're not rested, all the things that our cells go through. So it's a form of medicine for us, physically, psychologically, spiritually. And again, it's a chance for our baby to thrive.
And you said in the book, put that technology away and be
Yes.
present with your baby. We have a question in the chat, and we'll continue with discussing this chapter as well, because again, it is critically important. But we have a question: how do we get small children on board to help them understand mama's needs to rest and their support is also needed?
That's such a cute question. Love little babies. Well, that's why preferably I'm gonna give you the best scenario would be that we have a friend or a relative there at the home. Now, my daughter had her third baby. She had her children 2 years apart. I think they were, 2 and 4. I'm grandma, I'm Nana, I'm there. I'm taking them out. I'm saying, don't go upstairs in the room. Mommy's resting. Let's do something. Let's read a story. Let's do something different. So keeping them away from their mom when they're sleeping, but making them feel loved by me so they don't feel the need to be around mom. Get them excited about the baby. Baby's so happy, the baby loves you, but the baby needs to sleep now with mommy. Let's go down and do something. I did say if a single parent, it could be there's no one around, letting the bedroom become a sleeping room and moving to the front room where the kids can sleep on the floor with little mats and people take naps together, or they can watch a TV show safe while mom's watching, taking her nap. But it depends on their age. Like I said, 2 to 4, they're little. They don't even understand. They're playing and running around. So I have found that they can lay down with mom, getting in the bed with mom makes them sometimes be more still, and just try those different strategies.
Yeah, you talked about, thank you for answering that. You talked about rest, and in the book, you also talk about sleep. And when I was taking my copious notes and tabbing my book, I said, it's a difference. These are not the same. Can you talk to us about the difference and why both of them need to be looked at as being different in the value? You've already talked about the value of rest. Give us information about the value of sleep.
Sleep is an amazing blessing. We say we say rest is a revolution, and rest is resistance. But I say sleep is a form of worship. It's a gift from the Creator that we can sleep. That's why it's a torture mechanism, wrong. When you're being tortured, you're not allowed to sleep because it drives you crazy. And they did a study. People who on the streets who have mental health problem got it from being homeless, not because they were born that way, because they can't get a good sleep. They're afraid to sleep. They're afraid of being attacked. They don't get enough sleep. It causes problems. So when the new mom is not getting enough sleep, we're going to see a lot of stress happen for her because she's not getting rest. And what I love about sleep, which I think is such a miracle and a gift, that when we sleep, it's the time when physiologically our body can reset. So most healing happens when we're sleeping, which is why babies sleep so much and for so long. They're in a state of growth. They're growing all the new cells and things are forming for them. But for adults, it's the same thing. We do need to get into a good sleep. Now, granted, breastfeeding mothers will not have their 8 hours sleep because the baby wakes up every 2 to 3 hours. But I talk about the importance of learning how to co-sleep because it happens around the world. It can be done safely. So mothers are not getting up and they're able to get that long sleep because the baby just attaches itself to the breast like a kangaroo. And you don't even wake up at a certain point. And they're not going to choke. They fall off. The milk only comes up from being sucked. It's not like a bottle dripping. The other part is that the mother is going to recuperate better because she is rested. So we hear mom saying, I'm so exhausted. I hear that a lot on social media talks. I'm just so exhausted because they're not able to get to sleep. So even though she's breastfeeding and she's having a shorter sleep span, the studies say that her sleep is actually deeper than a non-breastfeeding person. There's more REM sleep. So she actually can feel more rested. So don't feel because I'm breastfeeding, I'm not getting that traditional 8 hours that I can't, sorry, that, don't feel that you can't get a good sleep because you are breastfeeding. So sleep, how rest works, rest gets us ready for the sleep. So if you're resting, people are, because insomnia is a big issue right now. And one, of course, is because people are on their phones a lot. We know that the blue light disrupts the melatonin, so it takes longer to sleep. But it says in the book for the mom to rest, to make sure her room is the right temperature. She has clean cotton sheets. She's gotten a massage. She's drinking her catnip or her sleepy time tea. Let her know that someone's going to be in the house with her because some moms don't feel comfortable sleeping. They're just afraid to be alone. There's someone in the house with her, in the kitchen, in the front, wherever they're going to be. And put the lights low, give her an eye mask, pull the curtains, and let her go to sleep. And don't wake her up till she wakes up on her own. And she'll wake up saying that she feels better. She can tolerate her engorged breast better. She can tolerate the contracting of the uterus called the involution. She can tolerate better her baby crying. The study said that mothers who are tired, they label the baby as being a difficult baby when the baby's really normal. But because they're so tired, just a normal cry, like this baby just won't stop crying. There's something wrong with this baby. When in fact, she's so tired that her sense of normalcy is not intact. So she's seeing it as a problem. So we really want to make sure that moms sleep. When I make a home visit, the first thing I want to ask her is like, when's the last time you went to sleep? After, how you doing, all that. And she'll say, I just woke up. That's great. I haven't slept, since 8 o'clock this morning. And now it's 12 and she's just 5 days postpartum or even 2 weeks postpartum. I want to know what happened. The small children, her husband keeps waking her up, phone keeps ringing, the baby keeps crying, but whatever it is, then we have to fix it. When we go into that home, our job is to make the difference. Maybe I'm going to take the baby while, do all the things I said. And they say, I'm going to hold the baby. I'm going to rock the baby while you take this rest. And if the baby, if I can't manage the baby, I will wake you up. Because that's what moms feel like, okay, I can't sleep. Go to the baby. Is the baby's crying? No, I promise the baby, if I can't come to your baby, I'm going to wake you up and give you a baby. Okay, so you go to take that nap, take that sleep. So we have to make sure that moms, it's called the lying in. That's why it's called the lying in. You're lying in. You're supposed to be lying down, lying in and resting and sleeping and just not doing a lot, but breastfeeding, holding the baby, eating, going to the bathroom, getting your stomach wrapped. All that's part of the being rested. And again, it's a concept. And I think we have to tell Black women that this thing of moving a lot and multitasking is a form of post-traumatic slave syndrome. We had to do a lot of things. We didn't have a choice. It's multiple things to survive. We had to cook, pump the water, go work in the big house. We just did it. And it's been passed on from generation to generation because no one knew to say, you know what, this is really not our culture. We need to rest. We talk about Mexico siesta, where Africa has siestas too. They walk slow. They sit down, they drink, they laugh together, they come together as a family. They do a lot of coming together, which is a form of resting. It may not be sleeping, but it gets to the resting. And then, we have light. So our lights can stay on 24 hours. So why go to sleep? So when the sun goes down, like my grandma did with the chicken, when the chickens went to bed, she went to bed. That was, she was raised that way. It was her era. Of course, I sat in front with the light on because I'm not from her era. I could force myself to go through the night. But we have to realize that we deserve rest. Rest is going to help us uh, bring down our stress level, which brings on cancers, it brings on heart problems, it brings on obesity. Stress is not good. And stress comes with not getting enough rest. Even the studies that not getting enough rest actually makes it difficult for us to even regulate our metabolism. So, but back to the baby, the more rested the mother is, the better she can take care of her baby. I'm not going to say good mom, bad mom, but more she can be attentive and do what she wants, which is to love her baby and enjoy her baby. And the baby can enjoy mama. So we want to protect sleep, that she actually goes to sleep. Maybe she has a dream. I said, what'd you dream last night? Oh, nothing. Or I dreamt baby. So even discussing her dreams, but you can't do that if you don't sleep. You don't get to get those dreams to talk about them. So let's normalize sleeping, you all. As mothers, tell them you need to get your rest. It's okay. You are a good mom by sleeping. You're gonna feel better. You have more tolerance for the crying baby and the little toddler and even your partner. I love to wake up. I'm like, oh my God, I go to bed the night before I wake up. Like it's a miracle. I feel great when I first wake up. It's such a nice feeling to wake up, and feel like, forget all that stuff from yesterday. So the same for the new mom. And she had a long birth, a cesarean section, that long labor, a lot of intervention, a lot of things going on. Even things went perfectly. Show her water birth, her home birth. She still needs to sleep. So we need to really normalize that and say that is the culture. The great midwife would be very upset. I read one book that a woman said she would, when the midwife left, she would go on the porch outside to the front yard. When she heard the midwife come up, she would run, jump back in the bed because she knew that she's supposed to be in that bed. I thought that was so funny that they would like sneak out and do that. And then they heard the midwife, they run back in. And then this beautiful ritual that once that time was over, you rest. We do the ritual. We take you out. We literally come to your bed. We sit you up. We give you something to drink. We smoked your clothes. You put that dress on. You walk around your house 3 times with a cup of water. And now you're no longer lying, period. You're still supposed to rest, but you're not stuck having to be forced to sleep on the same level. We still want you to, if that's clear. So there are phases of the postpartum period. Again, the 42 days being the most intensive, where we want mom sleeping as much as possible, resting as much as possible, reclaiming those traditions I talked about in chapter 1 that's going to feed into her resting. Because what we talked about in chapter 1 is understand we had a culture that made us be healthy. Moms had a better outcome back then. I talked to older moms. I didn't do anything. I don't hear the complaints. I don't hear they were tired and exhausted. No, Mama Lou was at my house and Missy, and they were feeding me and wrapping my stomach, and they were feeding me and holding the baby. And we don't hear the same stories because they were rested and they were cared for. So that's part 1. And part 8, rested, like making sure that that new mom um, can rest. And if she has to go back to work early, that's also a thing. Then even then, on your lunch break, can you elevate your feet? There's the law now, I think, through all the states that when you breastfeed by law, you have to have a private room. Take that privilege and lay down with your pump. Put 2 chairs together and bring a pillow and figure it out. Or go get in your car and lock your door and set your clock and doze off for 30 minutes to get an hour break. Put 2 breaks together and put it with your lunch so you got 90 minutes. We just have to be creative, y'all, like we've always been. We are creative people. If you have to go back to work, walk slow, keep your stomach wrapped and just rest at the desk the best you can. And then try to get those naps and get home and let that stuff stay where it's at and get back in that bed, and just have to kind of just got to, bang it out the best we can on those circumstances. It's not always going to be ideal, but we can still make it work by being creative and putting ourselves first as the new mom, that we deserve this. And I'm going to get my rest at work. Boss, you know what? I just had a baby. I got to rest a little bit. I'll come in 2 minutes earlier. I'll leave a little. In fact, I'm going to leave early. Just see what you can do. Don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah. So, Mama Shafia, before we transition into the question and answer, and I'm giving all the participants an opportunity to start submitting those questions now, I'm going to ask you one question that I thought about with reading the book, and I know moms who have just delivered maybe have the same question. In the book, you talk about the baby sleeping with mom or not sleeping with mom and sleeping with grandma or sleeping with someone else and only being brought to mama when it's time to breastfeed. But also you talked about sleeping with mom too. For those of us who maybe are worried about having the baby sleep, how do we do that in a safe way so that we are having that connection with our baby and skin to skin contact that you talk about in the book?
Well, first of all, I respect everyone's choice to do what they think is best for their baby and their family. I want to put that out there as my truth. But we're talking traditions, and traditionally was that mothers slept with their babies because mothers breastfed exclusively back then. They weren't really bottles, so people breastfed, and that was the norm. And people also had mats, so I mean they had a bigger bed that they could sleep, and the baby was less inclined to fall out. Now we have a whole campaign on back to sleep, and we're being taught these co-sleep, all these bad things are going to happen. I actually know the statistics, but I'm going to hold on to what the tradition was. So it says in the book, if you're going to do it, it should be a full-term baby. You should have at least a full-size bed, a queen or full-size. It should not be a single. It tends to be too small. Now you push it against the wall, so it's against the wall. You put it in between the wall and the bed. There's always that little crevice where a baby could actually. It's when they start to roll. When they're first little, they're okay. They're still, but when they start to roll, we don't want them to roll off the bed or roll into that crack and get stuck. So we take like a sheet and we stick it between the bed in the wall, so it's like another part of the bed, so the baby cannot roll into it. And then the baby's on the inside of the bed, and the mother's on the outside of the bed, and her partner's on the outside of her, because she, as a rule, is not going to roll on the baby. It's usually somebody who's not related. But of course, the book goes into detail. There's no smoking at all. You cannot be a smoker. If you do smoke, the baby should be in a crib because just all that nicotine is going to create a problem. Or the partner, if that partner smokes, they should not be in the bed for co-sleeping. Any medication that says don't drive when you take it, if you take it, you should not breastfeed because it means you're groggy, you're not yourself. When you're a mom and you birth your baby physiologically, whether it's cesarean section or not, you automatically are on alert. You're not going to roll on your baby. You're just, you're going to be there. It's just built in there. But the other person doesn't have those same hormones. So there is a safe way to do it. Now, what I wrote about with the grandma taking bed, just because I talked to a lot of other, my oral history, a lot of the grandmothers would take the babies back then, but they would give them formula during that to make them sleep and keep the baby all night so the mother could get her rest. Now, though, we have breast pumps, or hand expression to get the breast milk out. So instead of formula, it could be that grandma is going to get the baby a bottle. If the mother feels like I really need that sleep, I'm going to skip this physical one-on-one breastfeeding because I just want to get this extra 3 hours. And grandmas would take the babies at night. I also heard that when the mother has cesarean sex, they would also take the baby a lot at night for the mother to sleep. So that's just one particular family clan that practiced that tradition.
We do have some questions coming in, and I appreciate Christine for asking her question. She said, as a doula in training, what supports would you say we can use to support new moms on the basic level?
Well, I think everything in the book acts is basic. So sleeping's basic, having soup is basic, but I would just say for that question, and I think a lot of it has to do with explaining to a mom why you're suggesting what you're suggesting. Letting her know where this information is coming from and how it's going to benefit her and also what's the word called? Tweaking it according to her situation. So the basic is definitely rest. That's number one. The basic, she should be warm. Cold people get sick, right? That's why you put coats and shoes on her feet. So she should be warm, she should be resting, and she should be having hydration. So if it's not going to be soup, then she insists on having her thick lasagna, that's like very dense. Then she needs to make sure she's drinking a lot of room temperature water and having a lot of teas. Basic, by the way, is having a stomach wrap. These are basic things that we did. Like, stomach got wrapped on day 1 or day 2. She got the soup. She rested. She was kept warm. Is that the basic for you? I don't know who asked that question, but
Christine, let us know in the chat if you feel like Mama Shafia, you would like for her to expand. While we wait on Christine to respond, we have another question. And this is by a person who submitted anonymously, which we do respect. What's the best way to what is the best way to encourage moms to breastfeed at work?
At work?
Yes, at work.
So if they're working, they brought the baby with them, because most jobs you can't bring your baby. So
If the
just do you mean like bring the baby to work and breastfeed, or to keep breastfeeding even though you're working?
If you did submit that, can you elaborate for Mama Shafia so we can best answer your question? And Mama Shafia, while we wait for that,
Uh-huh.
talk to us about the need to incorporate some of these other simple recipes and growing herbs in our garden and things of that nature. Can you give us a quick, what would you say if a person is starting off very quickly, or they don't have enough time and they want to start a simple garden? What herbs would you suggest other than comfrey in their garden?
Peppermint and spearmint are great teas, good for the stomach, relaxation. Babies can drink them even. But there's a question where someone says, should new mamas always wrap our stomachs, or should this probably be a case by case? So, and I'll get back to the grab. I just want to say, because I
Okay.
saw that question.
Okay. Yeah.
The stomach wrapping is not optional. I think I have a section in my book where I met a lady on Facebook when I was talking about it. I actually know her. Her grandmother wrapped her stomachs. I'd never seen this before. Like, she was 16 having a baby. My friends are getting their stomach wrapped, and her grandmother said, "That's what's wrong with young girls. You don't know what's going on." And she said, "I wrapped your mother's stomach. My mother wrapped my stomach, and her mother wrapped her stomach." I said, "What a beautiful legacy! You can actually track this tradition in your family back 4 generations, when most have never even heard of it." So yes, the mother's stomach should be wrapped every time. Of course, people can always say no, so it's not a case by case. You get your stomach wrapped unless you say, "I don't want it," then we don't. But if you're my client or my family member, you'll get your stomach wrapped as soon as the baby's born. For cesarean mom, they also want their stomachs wrapped, and it can be wrapped. So it says in the book, you take a little cloth, you fold it over, and she holds on her incision, and then you wrap it gently. So the vaginal birth mom gets a stronger wrap, but the mother who had the cesarean birth, she gets a more gentle, because she has an incision there. And once the incision is strong, like 6 weeks later, then we can wrap a little tight. But in the beginning, the moms I've seen say, "Oh my God, I wish I had known about this. This is my third cesarean section. I never got wrapped like this. I feel way better." And it's really quick. We know they get that band in the hospital, but that band is like elastic. It's like, it just pulls, it does not give. We're using cotton, and the cotton breathes and it gives. And so that's why the cotton wrap is more advantageous to the wraps that we find at the hospital. It's just the band that just squeezes you in. They're trying to simulate what our tradition does, but they're not doing it correctly. So I hope that says it.
Thank you.
And then, shall I go back to the garden?
If you don't mind, if you could take about
Mm,
a minute to do that.
I think that everybody should grow something. It's just therapeutic, to take care of something. So mint, you can't go wrong with mint. It's non-controversial, and it's so easy to grow, because most herbs are weeds anyways, by the way. They're not flowers, so they're easy to grow. So even if you don't have a yard, I grew up in the Cathedral Project when before my family got a house. We lived in the Cathedral Project on the 4th floor. And I remember my mother taking the plastic, the milk cartons, plastic, and that was the wax cardboard, and putting dirt and growing tomatoes in our window my whole childhood. She always grew at least tomatoes in the house. So we know that this whole movement back to the earth, that all the Black farmers now and all the community gardens, there's so much support around the country that we can find somebody to give us a small start of a small plant, or like I said, get the seeds. And just, if you don't have an outside yard, you can't do it out, you're in Michigan and it's snowing, or Boston where it's freezing, then you can do it in the house and put it in your window. And then when you're cooking, you can just pop that mint. It's great in the salad. I pop mint and I put it in my water. I drink black tea and jasmine tea. I put my mint in those things. I smell it to keep me to alert when I'm in the working for long periods. I'll just go get some mint and rub my hands and literally do that. Or I use my mint a lot. I use it for, it's very useful in my home. I use it mostly fresh, because it's always fresh growing. So, but you can also dry it out and save tons of money, because mint tea over the winter, when there's no more mint, is expensive. Just really quick, I was so upset because I drink a lot of dandelion root, and there's crazy dandelions in my yard last year. I didn't pay attention, so of course I need dandelion in November. And I'm like, I had to go buy this crazy price, 26 or $15 an ounce. Like, I'm not gonna let this happen. So right now, you might have saw on Instagram, there's a bunch of dandelion my leaf in my backyard. So every morning, I'm actually picking it up so I can dry it. So it comes when winter comes, I will have my own dandelion. That's first of all organic, my touch, but more important, I have to pay no money for it. So that's my tip.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to have us sit in this space for about 5 seconds and just appreciate what we've been able to receive from Mama Shafia. It has been enlightening. It has been provided us a desire to do better for ourselves and for our family. While we sit here and thank Mama Shafia, please send her love through the chat.
I want to address Gina real quick. Gina, the
Okay.
miscarriage and the loss of the baby not coming, that is so real. We just went through that, unfortunately, just a week ago. That happened to me as a midwife. And it's extremely, in fact, we had a closing with the other midwife. We met at my house last night. We had a grief dinner, a healing, and a share. It's so traumatized when you're involved with the family. You love that family, you love their baby too. So we're all impacted. But for the mom, we're still giving the exact same thing I talked about. She's still getting that. We've gone to her house. She's in without disclosing. She's still new. We're still rotating, the three of us, going almost every other day, bringing food, wrapping her stomach, massaging her, crying with her, just sitting with her and her spouse and her children. And it's just a long journey. There's no way to fix it. When you lose a baby, there's nothing that anyone can do. The mother has to unfortunately go through that journey, and each journey is her way. I had one mom, took her 5 years. She literally cried. She told me after her baby would have been 7. She said, Mama Shafia, I'm just okay. 5 years. Some mothers are silent. They carry it aside, but our jobs are just to know that no matter how they do it, that unconditionally, I'm here for you. Anytime, 24/7. I'll continue visiting as she gets like maybe 3 months, 4 months. I may not go as often, but definitely I'll still check in and see her because it's a life journey. So thanks for bringing that up. It is very, very different and it's very real, and it will continue to happen because every baby's not going to stay. That's just the way it is. They're not going to stay, and so helping mom not feel guilty. She did nothing wrong. Getting rid of that guilt for the family, making sure that the spouses don't go at it like it's your fault. You should have, coulda, woulda, but helping them to find their own acceptance. Putting to their own faith, whatever they do, supporting that in that practice for them. So thank you for allowing me to share on that.
Oh, most definitely. And thank you for looking at that. I unintentionally missed that. So thank you, Mama Shafia. I,
Absolutely.
I did see some love coming through the chat. Continue to send that while we just thank Mama Shafia for sharing her inside expertise and time with us today. As someone said in the chat, this hour went way too fast. Her perspective has added so much to this conversation, and please continue the conversation with Mama Shafia again through her social media handles at shafiamonroe.com, her website, and also by purchasing her book on Amazon, Mothering the Mother. Thank you, everyone, for joining this session, staying engaged in the discussion, and submitting your thoughtful questions. We are so grateful you spent time with us. We would like to acknowledge our sponsors. The Safer Births Now virtual conference is made possible through the support of our title sponsors and program partners who have a commitment in advancing safer maternal and newborn care. We extend our sincere thanks to our title sponsors: Birthing the Magic Collaborative, Black Coalition for Safe Motherhood, Transitions Women's Health Consulting, LLC. We also gratefully acknowledge our program partners: Navigate Maternity, A Light After 9, Chi Ada Phi Sorority Incorporated, Herd App, Hive Impact Fund, and last, we extend our sincere thanks to your Village Studio for this outstanding support that you have provided us through technical and administrative needs. Together, these organizations help strengthen, educate, connect, and provide innovative supports of Safer Births Now. Together, they help strengthen education and making sure we're providing the best information possible for mamas. We do have a rich lineup of sessions scheduled throughout the conference, and we invite you to continue to stay engaged with us. Please visit the conference website to explore what's ahead and make plans to join the sessions that speak to you personally. We encourage you to continue the conversation on social media by using hashtag SaferBirthsNow and by following us on all of our social media handles. Thank you again for being part of Safer Births Now community and the movement towards safer, sacred childbirth. Please enjoy the rest of this conference.